I lost my light over here. I need it. There we go. Okay. So, April here, edition of Don't Stop Storytelling is about something a friend inspired me to talk about, which is why stories are important, why they're still relevant, especially at a time when AI is taking over. It seems like everything. Sorry, I got a little something going on. Uh, My core feeling is that stories are built into our DNA. Little legal disclaimer: I'm a person of faith, a person of the Christian faith, and so I feel that regardless of whatever your belief systems are, if you believe in nothing, stories are wired into our DNA. So, but from a Christian perspective, being made by God meant that we God spoke to us and gave us the Bible, right? It's a collection of stories, right? It's a love letter. It's a love letter in stories. Or if you're Muslim, you're looking at the Quran. Depending if I think if you're Hindu, it's like the Bhagavad Gita. Forgive me if I'm messing up the stories, but a lot of these things, whether you're Buddhist or whatever, there's all these stories, and they have all these amazing traditions around the world. Stories tied into music. It's on the caves. We've been looking at stories since time began. Stories help us to relate to each other on such a humanistic level. We help us to understand things that we don't understand. And in a time that things are speeding up exponentially, where whether it's from dating or profiles or job hiring, people losing patience with each other, they can just, they can, Google you or look you up in ChatGPT, Claude, whatever, and come up with an entire summary of quote unquote your story, and it doesn't even hit the tip of the iceberg. When I think about my own life and all the stories that I've lived, the many stories I believed that were true, that were false, ideas that I had, things I tried to grow out of, or how my story started in one chapter and ended completely differently. Or like, for example, I have been a person that has had a lot of experience with hospice, and had powerful stories shared with me with other hospice caretakers and survivors, in those spaces that are unique to that time, place, and space, and that singular type of experience that's really like it can be a global experience because hospice exists everywhere. But stories should make us curious as to what we don't know about another human being. I feel for me personally, as a human being and as a filmmaker, like when I see people, whether I travel and I look in windows or I see people walking down the street, or even holding hands, you can assume that they're in love, but they may be walking through grief. You might assume they're husband and wife, but maybe they're a lover and someone else's spouse, or maybe they're siblings, or maybe they're just really close friends. But even just a someone holding someone's hand, we're very quick to draw conclusions from a visual image. And stories bridge gaps between humanity and people and help us to understand things from a different perspective, if we are open to them, right? And so when you look at like sci-fi, for example, it's like, you look at everything from Star Wars and a lot of the layers of things, it wasn't just action and fantasy. There were layers of political activism, and speaking to the Holocaust, and George Lucas's experience. When you look at the Empire and the things that they were doing, they spoke to slavery. It wasn't just, as they say, a Western placed in space. There was a dimension and elements of all these humanistic ideas, to make us have faith and believe in a higher power, believe in the force, and it's a force that connects the universe, connects all of us, that connectivity, and also just tying it into so many different areas. There were so many layers to even just a story like that made it universal. And stories empower us. When you think about like how in the 1920s they were talking about, I can't remember what year, but it was during the Great Depression. I remember people paying a penny just to go see Superman, right? And deciding they were going to skip the soup line just to be inspired by hope, right? So stories have such impact and power across generations and timelines, that I believe that through all of this, even though people are telling new stories with AI, they're telling new stories with different types of equipment. And you look at how many filmmakers did not cross over from the silent era into talkies, because they couldn't adapt to the technology. You may have a number of filmmakers that also happens to, or you may have a resurgence, which I'm hoping for, of really awesome independent films on a small scale instead of the mega blockbuster monolithic $1 billion pictures. smaller personal stories told by smaller film crews or one person wonders now. I think the challenge is, though, for more experienced filmmakers that are trained or classically trained, or they've worked in, and on large scale productions, is, used to like collaborating with hundreds of people and all the, the proper structures of first and second ADs and all the different units and everything else, to feel important to that a story, whether it's told musically, through music, or it's told through your pen, it's told on film or on video in different formats, right? Even told with AI or combining a bunch of different formats. I think the challenge is understanding that your story is as important and as necessary and needed, regardless of the format, the number of people in the credits, how big you can make it, because it's hard to step back from that, especially if you know that, I'm like, oh man, if I had these gels, if I had this, if I had that, if I had this, if I had an AD or had an AC and a gaffer and this, that, and other, we could do this. But I think the thing is that it is, the stories are still necessary. They may change in terms of what the content can be in the present day and age to some extent, if you're doing things just independently and trying to shoot just all in camera. But at the same time, through AI, you can also tell to tell some of the larger monolithic stories that you see these block. Pull that off. So we froze. Okay, so we're back, hopefully. Okay, so sorry for the technology break, but there's an opportunity both as a smaller independent filmmaker to find your voice and to cultivate your craft regardless, which we should be doing anyway. Or writing books and things of that nature. I do believe that humans know humans, and that just like if you're running out eating a bunch of fast food, there's a time that you really need to eat home or eat home consistently, that people are going to gravitate towards original voices and thoughtful, true, and authentic experiences told on whatever format, but told well. So we can either collapse under the pressure, or come back and know that maybe for a time we may tell stories of different sizes with different capacities and capabilities, from very small with single person crews, and films have been made that way for such a long time, all the way to the large high level films. But our adaptability is what has to change, not the fact that stories are needed, because stories are they inspire, they give hope, they pass the time. There's so many things, and the same reasons why we are in love with stories and interested in stories are the reason why other human beings need it. One of the saddest stories and the questions that I have even currently now is hearing about the school children, the girls' school, where there was a bomb dropped in Iran, and then 40 minutes later there was another bomb dropped. And for me, it's like the loss of life of children is cataclysmic. The loss of innocent life. And also, one of the questions that I had was like, who was thinking about their stories? Who decided that their story didn't need to continue, right? And originally, being a journalism major, I was always making short films when I was a kid. Since I was like 12, 14, I started making films and stuff like that. But as a hobby, when I first went to college, it was a journalism major, and broadcast journalism, before I switched formally into film, right? So, but the thing is that I was always curious about people's stories, like what is going on with them? Why are they saying this? Why are there opposing voices? What is the truth? And is the truth different from you based on where you're standing, who you are, your ethnicity, your experience, how you were raised? In a neighborhood, in two houses, you can have two totally different experiences, and still be at the same school, which was also true for me. So I always wonder, what are other people's stories? And I never wonder why they matter. I just wonder, to what depth have I understood them? So I think the challenge for us is going to be now just understanding each other's stories, and stories worth telling, and exploring at deeper levels with heightened sensitivity, in a time where content is trying to replace stories, but there can be some sort of partnership in the technology and the way that we are and have been storytelling, so that we can bring some of the many or most of or almost all the skills that we have to tell really phenomenal stories, but maybe at different scales. And stories to me will always be important because humans need them. We need them to move forward. We need them to grow. We need them to grieve. We need them to come to a point of acceptance, and we need them to find joy, and we need them to find each other. So that is the answer for today. All right, and thanks for tuning in. And don't stop storytelling because we need you. That's it. Bye.